Brand new season, brand new dawn for Box. And it's lights out and away we go.
Simply lovely.
I was really enjoying that last
Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of Box, where we are discussing the Japanese Grand Prix. Now, as much as I hate waking up to watch a race at ridiculous o'clock, it's actually really weird to watch an international race that I'm not at in the middle of the afternoon. Because, Australia. But, anywho, let's get into what happened at the Japanese Grand Prix. Let's start off with Red Bull. They had a very mixed weekend overall, let's be honest. On the one hand, you have Max single-handedly securing Red Bull's 6th Constructors' Championship. So congratulations to them. Well deserved. Shout out to Adrian Newey for designing the rocket ship that they have. And then on the other hand, you've got Sergio Perez, who thought his Formula One car was a bumper car, or a Dodgems car, whatever you want to call it, and did everything in his power to DNF. Not once, but twice, which wasn't without controversy. But we'll come back to that later. Overall, moving on to Mercedes. They had a strong weekend. I mean, they finished 5th and 7th. Not bad. Could be better, could be worse. Let's be real. But I think the most interesting part was that George was able to overrule the team with his controversial tyre strategy, which if it had worked off, would have been phenomenal. If it had paid off, it would have been phenomenal. It would have ultimately given them a podium. But in those conditions, in the heat, going for a one-stop, I don't really think it was the right call. And I was surprised that the team allowed him to do it. It didn't make sense given the conditions. Yes, he thought that at the time it was the right call, but I think that also speaks to his experience, but he's not as experienced as his teammate, and I think that's starting to show. And I think there's also a little bit of friction starting to show between the two teammates, given that George's strategy call didn't pay off, and he wanted Lewis to help bail him out of that, using Carlos Sainz's little DRS trick from Singapore in order to keep Carlos behind both of them. But, did the possibility of a benefit outweigh the risk? So that's just, But anyway, overall, they did have a good weekend. They came back, scored some good points, secured 2nd place in the championship. They're now 40 points up on Ferrari. So overall, it's not great. It's not bad. It's kind of average for them. On to Aston Martin. I've mentioned this before. I think I mentioned it last week, and I may very well be harping on about it. You can tell me to shut up, but I am just genuinely curious. What has happened to Aston Martin's early season form? Yes, Alonso is still currently qualifying in the top 10 consistently. He's done so in pretty much every race this season, but he has not been qualifying as high as he was early in the season. Prior to the Spanish Grand Prix, the lowest start that he had on the grid was 6th. However, in I think it's 9 races since then, he's only qualified in the top 3 once, and has consistently qualified anywhere from 7th to 10th, with the outlier being Zandvoort, where he qualified 5th. Yes, this is a hell of a lot better than his teammate in Lance Stroll, whose highest qualifying position to date is 6th, with his worst being 20th. And yes, that is taking into account the fact that he crashed out in qualifying and blah, 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 but he's still nowhere near where Alonso is. But taking all of that out, in comparison to Stroll and where the team were last season, Alonso's streak of Q3 appearances is nothing to be laughed at. But in comparison to the beginning of the season, it is far less impressive. Moving on to their race day performances, right? Alonso has scored points in every Grand Prix this season, except for Singapore, which is a fantastic, incredible statistic within itself. But for a team and a driver that started the season with 5 out of 6 podium finishes, there is a noticeable decline in performance since Spain, once again. And since then, Alonso has only achieved 2 podiums and a lowest points finish of 9th. Again, this is still a great achievement to have scored points in 15 out of 16 Grand Prix. But there is a significant and noticeable decline in performance for a driver and a team that was previously challenging the rocket ship that is the Red Bulls. So I'm genuinely just curious as to what has happened. Are the upgrades not working how everyone thought they would? Or is it something within the team? Has morale declined? Has there been something internally that's gone on? I'm just genuinely really curious as to what has happened. Is there an issue with the car, or have they done something with an upgrade that is not agreeing with Alonso and Stroll? Because since Spain, neither driver really seems comfortable with the car. And in Japan, the reason why I say that has something happened within the team is, the way the strategy calls that they're making and the reactions that Fernando is having to those. I mean, the decision to pit early, for example, and, heat of the moment and all of that factored in. Alonso's calling out of the team saying, "You've thrown me to the lions." Is that all it is? Just a heat of the moment comment like, this was a bad strategy call, we should never have done this? Or is there something more there? So, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. And hopefully, for the next 6 races of the season, they start to get some form back. But, yeah. It's sad to see that they have declined, given they were so competitive early on. And that they were challenging Red Bull. For a significant period of the early season, we thought, hold on, we could get Fernando Alonso another win. And we could get him to, be challenging Max and the Red Bulls week in and week out. So I'm just curious as to where that performance has gone. So, yeah. But what about Stroll, you ask? I know you didn't, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Well, he's finished in the points 8 times this season. That's 16 races in. It's about 50-50, right? His highest points finish was in Australia, where he finished 4th. And his lowest finish being 16th. He's DNF'd 3 times and did not start in Singapore. So it's a bit of a mediocre statistics for a mediocre driver, let's be honest. On to Ferrari. Look, there's nothing that jumped out at me about Ferrari this weekend. They seem to be rather tame. I don't know if they're learning or if things are changing per se with Fred. Now, I wonder if his policies are coming in to be implemented. But I don't know. They just didn't, for me, they didn't jump out at me this weekend. They were just kind of there. Yes, Charles bagged for another 4th place. I think that's, 3 in a row? Which isn't bad. That's a great statistic. Good on Charles. But, Carlos's streak of podiums comes to an end. He did still bag some good points, coming home 6th, thanks to George Russell's failed attempt to keep it in within, But, overall, Ferrari were just, I don't know, they didn't excite me in Suzuka, which I guess is a good thing, because otherwise I'd be just crapping all over their strategy. But there wasn't anything completely and utterly outrageous that they did this week that makes me go, what are they doing? And I like not having to sit here and bag out Ferrari and play the clown music. It's a nice change. Now, if they can keep going on this line and improve the car, get Chucky back to a position where he can be up there challenging Max and Lewis and Lando and George and Checo for podium positions, And for the championship, that would just be the icing on top of the cake. But I'm going to leave Ferrari there, just for a little bit. Hopefully, out in Qatar, they wow me. I want Ferrari to wow me this weekend. With performance, with strategy, with everything. I don't just want to see them there making up the numbers. But anywho, on to McLaren. My papaya. I'm wearing my papaya today because McLaren are on a roll. Lando, Oscar, stellar performance. They had a great weekend. They've backed up Singapore. And it was just, overall, as a papaya fan, I was on cloud nine. Oscar Piastri, our little rookie, our little Aussie rookie, bagging second position in quali, starting on the front row with Max. Lando in P3. The opening on lap 1 into turn 1, I actually screamed. I was so nervous. I thought for sure Max was going to wipe both of them out. For that split second where Lando was in front of Max, I had heart palpitations. I'm thinking this could be the one chance that they have to really challenge Max. Yes, I was being incredibly delusional, and all of my friends and family will tell you that. But it was a hope that I had. But, I'm not mad. Lando came home, P2, and Oscar secured his maiden Formula 1 podium with a P3 finish. And I am ecstatic for them, because at the beginning of the season, fighting for P15, at no point did I think that this was ever going to happen this year. That they would be up there fighting with Max and the Red Bulls in front of Ferrari and Mercedes and Aston Martin to be getting those podium places consistently. So, shout out to them. They've done a fantastic, magnificent job. Everyone at the factory is killing it with those upgrades and everything like that. So, fingers crossed that I think they've still got a couple of upgrades to come this season. Lando might be able to get his maiden win. And if this is any indication as to what the car's going to be like next season, I have no doubt that they will be able to challenge Red Bull and Mercedes and everyone. And fingers crossed there is a maiden win in there for both Lando and Oscar. Speaking of maiden wins, though, for my papaya boys, I had an existential crisis this week when I thought of the possibility that Oscar may get his maiden win before Lando. And that was not a thought that I ever, or that was not a problem that I thought I would have at the beginning of the season. I thought it was going to be a very long season. They're both going to be down the bottom of the pack with the Williams and the Haas and the Alfa Romeos. But the existential crisis I had was phenomenal, and I'm not mad about it. But it did shake me to my absolute core, thinking of Sochi 2021. But anywho, I'm not going to dive into... I've seen some people discussing, the dynamic between Lando and Oscar and what happened during the race. I'm not going to dive into that because I personally don't see that there's anything there. Lando had the pace, Oscar didn't. And it comes down to that experience. This was the first time Oscar had driven at that track. Lando was that bit more experienced. And that's all I'm going to say on it. On to their former rivals, Alpine. Now, they accomplished something this weekend. Both cars managed to finish the race for the first time since Zandvoort. And they bagged off 3 whole points. That is progress. They're not really making any inroads into catching McLaren, but they're also not really being caught by Williams either. So, that's something. And those 3 points are something. They're positive. Do I think that they have remedied their reliability issues and what was going on there? No. From what I have seen, what I have heard, I don't believe that they had any upgrades this weekend. In Japan. I didn't think they had any upgrades. I could be wrong, but I think it was just, they got lucky. But A lot of team fighting this week. I know I mentioned it at Mercedes. Didn't want to mention it at McLaren. But Alpine, team orders are a very sensitive topic. Everyone was a bit surprised when Pierre Gasly decided that he wanted to go there, go to Alpine, given that he and Esteban Ocon don't really get on, or didn't really get on. And they seem to have just been like, oh no, nothing to see here, we're good friends, it's fine. But the Frenchmen this weekend, yeah, they might have undone themselves a little bit. Just a little bit. You know, Pierre thought he could get Fernando. He couldn't. And he was then ordered to give the place back to Esteban. And he didn't like that. And this comes back to the whole thing of whether or not team orders should play any bearing. But if they're willing to argue over the radio about things and everyone can hear it, then what's it like behind closed doors? What are we not privy to? How bad is the infighting, if any? I'm not saying there is. This could have just been like a Fernando incident. Heated comments on the radio. They'll discuss it in the debrief and move on. But other than that, good job for Alpine. Both cars finished a race in the points. So good job. Williams. I feel bad for Williams at this point. They had an absolutely horrible weekend. Now, Alex, he did good. He did quite well in qualifying, from memory. Let me find my statistic. I've lost my statistic, but that's fine. So anyway, yeah, he did okay in qualifying. Logan, not so much. You're not meant to crash the car in qualifying, again, but he did. And that proved to be honestly quite costly for the team. Because he received a 10-second time penalty and had to start the race from the pit lane, which is fine because he was starting 20th anyway, so he didn't really lose any positions there. But he got the 10-second time penalty because they had to start working on the car, putting it back together prior to 9 a.m. on race day, which is against the regulations. And then to cap it all off, he DNF'd. So he didn't even get to finish the race, nor did he get to serve his penalty. So now that carries over to this weekend in Qatar, where he may get that penalty, or, you know, it could be up to the stewards. He could receive a grid penalty. He could be dropped three or more places. So has this been what sealed his fate? Has this ultimately cost him his seat in 2024? I mean, he is yet to score any points. I'm not saying that he had a seat in 2024, but if there was a possibility of him getting a seat with Williams in 2024, has that now gone out the window? James Vowles has come out and said that because he's crashing so much, it has impacted on the development of the car for next season. Because he's going through so many parts, they're redirecting funds and manpower to making new parts for this season's car, rather than in addition to what they'd already manufactured. They've gone through what they thought they would need. So his performance is not only impacting the team for this season, it's now also having a detrimental effect on next season. And rumour has it, James also met with little Mickey Schumacher at the request of Toto this weekend in Suzuka, but with no luck. Rumour has it, James has compared Mick's simulation data with that of Logan's data, and he was not impressed. It didn't scream to him that he absolutely needed to sign Mick and put Mick in that car, which breaks my little heart. But if he's not the right person for the team or anything like that, it's for the best. I would love to see Mick back in a car and racing again, but I don't want to see him back in a similar situation to what he was in with Haas. I think he still has some learning to do, and he can do that on the simulator and under Toto and all of that. So I would love to see him in that Williams car, and do I have any doubt that Toto is going to be in James's ear badgering him about it? No, I don't. He will be. But I think Logan also has a lot of potential, and this is only his first season. So it would be brutal of Williams to just go, no, you've done one season, you haven't performed, you're done, and drop him. But I can also see why they would. His performances haven't exactly been show-stopping. And in comparison to the other rookies that we've seen this year, yes, he's doing better than Nick DeVries. He wasn't dropped mid-season. But he's crashing out in qualifying, and Oscar is putting it on the front row. Liam Lawson is making Q2, Q3, and he's only done 4 races, and he's scored more points than Logan. So there's a lot there that I can understand why they wouldn't want him. But I guess we'll see. There's still 6 races, and I can't imagine that they would leave it too long. We'll hear something more than likely before Abu Dhabi, if not in Abu Dhabi. On to Haas. There's not really a lot to say. They were just a bit like Ferrari. They were just kind of there. They had a largely uneventful race weekend. Apart from K-Mag being a victim of Sergio Perez's demolition derby, he still managed to come back and finish in P15, 16, something around there, just behind Nico. So, not bad. He recovered well. But neither car was able to score points. So I can't imagine Jean and Gunther were happy about that, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles, unfortunately. Alfa Romeo, Bottas was the first victim in Perez's demolition derby. He unfortunately sustained significant floor damage due to his little adventure through the runoff and the gravel, and I think he was the first retirement of the race. So that was disappointing for everyone. And Joe had a great recovery. He started 19th, came back to finish 13th, so an overall gain of 6 positions. So neither of them were able to secure points. But it's sort of what we expect at this point. It's not like Alfa Romeo doing great things. They're kind of just, again, they're just there. AlphaTauri, bottom of the constructors. They had, I want to say, a good weekend. They confirmed their driver lineup for 2024. Go Yuki, go Danny. Super pumped Danny's back full time. However, should Liam have been given the seat over Daniel, and I'm not just gonna, don't come at me, because rumour has it Daniel is the preference to replace Checo in 2024, either at the beginning of the season or a mid-season switch, if Red Bull want to change their lineup. Is it worth then changing the driver lineup at AlphaTauri? And I mean, Daniel, he was on loan from Red Bull. Could he have gone back to Red Bull in a reserve role, or stayed with AlphaTauri in that reserve role, doing what he's doing now with his broken hand, and help develop the drivers and the cars? And then when he gets the call up from Red Bull, because let's be honest, it's not a matter of if but when, he has imparted his knowledge, his wisdom, and his experience on Lawson and Tsunoda, and put AlphaTauri in a more competitive position, impacting that team less than if it's Tsunoda and Danny, and then Red Bull decide Checo's out, Danny's in, Checo's dropped to a reserve role, Lawson's bumped up for AlphaTauri, and it's just a lot of chopping and changing. I mean, after all, Lawson in his 4 races has done an absolutely phenomenal job. He's finished higher than Yuki for the 3rd time in 4 Grand Prix. He has scored almost equal points. He's scored 2, Yuki scored 3. He's managed to finish higher than Yuki. So could he have replaced Yuki? I mean, for 4 races, it's what he has been able to achieve has been phenomenal. Let's be honest. He, in my opinion, is the 2nd best rookie to come out of this season. So, for me, I think AlphaTauri should have taken the risk of not going with an experienced, driver lineup in Daniel and Yuki. I think Danny, as much as he doesn't want to be in a reserve role, I think he is going to get the call up for Red Bull at some point. Given Checo's performance and his going through parts and front wings and all of that, like there's no tomorrow. I think he's going to get the call up to Red Bull. And I think they have missed an opportunity here to not have this impact AlphaTauri's season. But I guess we'll see. I could be wrong. Danny may not get a call up. I would love to see him get back together with Max and have more Maxual content that would just cap off my entire life. But I don't know. Speaking of Perez, the ultimate question to come out of the Japanese Grand Prix weekend was, should Perez have been able to come back out and serve his time penalties for his demolition derby shenanigans after retiring his car because of those collisions, and then, come back out, serve the time penalty, and then retire the car again. And yes, I'll preface this by saying the FIA allowed it. Red Bull consulted the FIA, asked if what they were going to do was okay, and the FIA allowed it. But that doesn't necessarily mean it was the correct thing to do. They themselves said that they got it wrong with Max in Singapore with his impeding. They didn't give him any penalties, they gave him a warning. And then they've said, in Japan, sorry guys, we messed up on that one. So, I took this question over to my TikTok earlier this week, and I asked you guys whether or not this should have been allowed. And out of the responses that I got, most people said no. Once you retire the car, you retire the car. It's in the garage. You've got people working on it. And and Checo himself got out of the car. So, to me, it's a no-brainer. He shouldn't have been allowed back out. If that's the case, then Williams could have sent Logan back out for one lap after they'd worked on the car. Sent him back out for one lap, served his time penalties, and brought him back in. So that way they didn't have any repercussions for this week. So it just, to me, it doesn't make sense. And it has nothing to do with this being, it's Red Bull, right? And more to do with the fact of consistency. Because now they've said that because Red Bull have found this loophole, they're going to go back and change the regulations. So this can never happen again. So, to be honest, it should never have been able to happen. At no point should Perez have been able to do this. He got out of the car. And precedent says, once you're out of the car, you're done. But anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts. On to something a little bit happier. The award for the most wholesome moment of the weekend goes to Mr. Sebastian Vettel. There are very few people that can unite the entire grid for something non-racing related. And Sebastian is one of them. His buzzing corner insect hotel initiative united everyone, drivers and team principals alike. I even saw Max and Lewis sitting together, smiling. Like, on what planet does that happen? So, ultimately, it was a great initiative. Buzzing corner was a hit. And it was just so wholesome. I loved it. It was just, happiness. But, okay. Looking ahead to Qatar, it's safe to say Max is going to receive the ultimate 26th birthday present, a third consecutive World Drivers' Championship. But it's unlikely he's going to have to wait until Sunday to get it, given that it's a sprint weekend. And he just has to finish, I think it's top 7 or 3 points to clinch that title. And let's be honest, unless Red Bull have another weekend like they did in Singapore, it's pretty safe to say that he'll come first in the sprint and he'll come first in the Grand Prix. Maybe. If he doesn't go out celebrating on Saturday night and have a big one and come out a little dusty on Sunday. But, we'll see. It should be a great weekend. I'm definitely not looking forward to getting up at 3 a.m. to watch the race, or the sprint shootout, or all of it. I'm going to be a zombie. But happy birthday and congratulations, Maxi. You deserve it. Just maybe now you can let someone else take a win. Just maybe a little certain British McLaren driver. It's just a thought. Anyway, thank you all for watching. This has been another episode of Box Box. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you next week for Qatar. Bye, everyone.